Glad you could join us today on EarthFile. Welcome to the program. I'm Ayola Kasim. It is now a conventional wisdom that everything environmental is connected, and there are strong linkages between gender and the environment. The Global Gender and Environment Outlook, a report released by the United Nations Environment Programme recently, states that disasters, climate change, conflict, and health are particularly cross-cutting. Today on EarthFile, we will examine the complex relationship between gender and these issues. To stay with us. The Global Gender and Environment Outlook is a collaborative project between the United Nations Environment Programme and strategic partners to bring gender issues to the heart of environmental assessment and decision-making. This Global Gender and Environment Outlook was a massive effort engaging more than 50 experts and is the first comprehensive and global assessment of the connection between gender and environment.
We know that every aspect of the environment is genderized. We know that environmental changes affect the lives of women and men in very different ways. We know that women are more often severely affected by environmental degradation than men. We know that women are often better than men at holistic and long-term planning, which is essential for the environment. We also know that investing in women and girls, and particularly in their education, is the best investment any society can make. So this we know, but we lack knowledge and insight on exactly how the environment affects women and men differently. And we lack a clear understanding of what choices men and women have available to them to secure a sustainable future. This is where the Global Gender and Environmental Outlook will be crucial.
It points out that gendered environmental analysis is not just a matter of add women and stare. In fact, it is not primarily about adding women at all. The goal is to bring a gender lens to environmental assessment, which makes both men and women visible as actors and demonstrates how femininity, masculinity, and environmental change affect one another. The report shows quite clearly that every aspect of the environment is gendered. Policies must therefore be gender responsive, or else they will be incomplete and unsustainable.
The 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda highlights the interconnectedness between gender and the environment. As examples, I could cite the focus on women in climate change-related planning under Goal 13, or the focus on the needs of women in transport, sustainable transport, under Goal 11, in Energy for All, Goal 7, as well as in equal access to and control over land and natural resources, under Goal 5. It is clear that this agenda will succeed or fail to the extent that we manage to realize the environmental commitments that underpin it. These environmental commitments are also directly linked to our ability to step up to a 50-50 gender equality. The GGAO can help us to understand this approach much better.
Everywhere in the world, men and women occupy different positions in relationship to the environment. They experience the impact of environmental changes differently. Gender roles often create differences in the ways men and women act in relation to the environment, and in the ways men and women are enabled or prevented from acting as agents of environmental change. Everyone has an important role to play in moving towards environmental sustainability. Recognizing women as part of the solution is therefore not only a human right in itself, but also provides a unique opportunity to address the often deep-rooted inequalities in society that impact negatively on the urban and rural environment.
It's well established that environmental hazards are a major contributor to global death and disease around the world, and women and young children are disproportionately affected by these. And yet women also provide invaluable contributions to sustaining communities around the world and managing the Earth's biodiversity and its natural resources. It's quite clear that we will not be able to address the significant environmental challenges of our time unless we do it through a meaningful participation of both men and women.
Researchers have found that activities traditionally carried out by women are closely linked to the environment. They are often tied to ecosystem goods and services, such as clean water, For instance, UNICEF estimates that across 25 sub-Saharan African countries, women spend a combined total of at least 16 million hours each day collecting drinking water, compared with men's 6 million hours.
Women generally fall into the more vulnerable groups, not only because of livelihoods, because of the way they're living and their access and use of basic resources, services, and in the end, housing. So overall, I think this report is talking about how do we narrow the gender gap. Of course, awareness is the first step, but then you have to do something about it. And what I really think the report does is give you many case studies of where the gender gap is actually being narrowed today. Yes, it's in agriculture, water, sanitation, education, but it just continues to go on. So in every avenue of life, in everything that we do, narrowing that gender gap is essentially what we're advocating today.
In many regions, women's care work includes water use and management, cooking, cleaning and laundry, which all require fetching and hauling water. Similarly, women and girls spend a significant portion of their time, up to 4 hours a day each in sub-Saharan Africa, performing subsistence tasks linked to natural resources, such as gathering firewood or growing vegetables to feed their families. This deprives them of time or access to other activities, not least education, decently paid employment and leisure that could enhance their welfare and well-being and that of their families. And it limits their options for social and political interaction outside the household. Yet it also means women are well placed to understand firsthand how important environmental sustainability and resource management are for their families and communities. In spite of this, women remain insufficiently recognized and involved in environmental policy making and environmental management. Analysts warn that this must change.
As the international community's attention turns to the implementation and monitoring of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the GGEO will contribute to achieving this, as well as tracking several key sustainable development goals. And this is especially the case for the more environmental goals, such as water and sanitation, energy, climate change, biodiversity, sustainable consumption and production, and so on and so forth. The GGEO concretely makes the case for gendered nature of environmental interactions and environmental unsustainability and sustainability. It demonstrates the urgent need for basic gender and environment data and statistics, for better sex disaggregation of new data across the Sustainable Development Goals. It also shows the threats as well as the opportunities for the health and the well-being of all, the planet, men and women, boys and girls today and in the future.
According to the international NGO Oxfam, female farmers are central to smallholder farming. They account for up to 50% of the agricultural labor force in some parts of the developing world. Women represent more than half the world's population. They stand on the front line in terms of poverty, yet provide invaluable contributions to sustaining communities around the world and managing the Earth's biodiversity and natural resources. Despite their role and know-how, women's contribution is regularly undervalued and ignored. Furthermore, women are uniquely vulnerable to environmental degradation. For example, it is well established that environmental hazards are among the major causes of global death and disease, and that the burden falls disproportionately on women and young children, especially in less developed countries.